I was alone in my trailer on set, 3 in the morning, when Jesus appeared and told me that 90% of the prayers Christians are praying will never be answered. And then he showed me the one prayer that heaven cannot ignore. I've played Jesus for years in The Chosen, spoken his words thousands of times, but I wasn't ready for what he was about to reveal about prayer, about why our churches are full of unanswered petitions and disappointed believers who think God isn't listening. Before we begin, tell me one thing you're praying for right now in the comments. I want to pray with you by name. And if you're a true believer in Christ, if you've genuinely repented, if you have saving faith, if you're truly following Jesus, please subscribe. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been taught about prayer. I need to know there are believers out there who are awake, watching, and ready. So, it started like this. We'd wrapped filming late that Thursday night. I mean, really late, maybe 1 or 2 a.m. I was exhausted, still in my robe and sandals, just sitting there in my trailer scrolling through my phone before changing. And I came across this prayer request thread in one of those Christian Facebook groups I'm in, just hundreds of them, thousands probably, praying for a new car. Please pray I get this promotion, believing God for a financial breakthrough, claiming healing for my back pain. Nothing wrong with any of that, right? I mean, we're supposed to bring our requests to God. That's what I've always been taught. Ask and you shall receive, knock and the door will be opened. So I started to pray for some of these people like I usually do, but honestly, something felt off. I couldn't shake this feeling in my chest, this heaviness. I set my phone down and just sat there in the quiet. The set was completely empty. Everyone had gone home. And I remember thinking about all the times I'd portrayed Jesus receiving prayers in the show, people coming to him desperate, broken, seeking. But this was different somehow. This felt like someone was trying to tell me something. Jesus, I said out loud, not really expecting anything. Why do so many prayers go unanswered? I mean, you said to ask. You promised. So why? I didn't finish the sentence. The temperature in the trailer dropped. I'm not being dramatic. I literally watched my breath fog in the air. And then he was there. Not like I portray him in the show. Not gentle and soft-spoken. His presence was, I don't even have words for it, commanding, heavy. The air itself felt thick with authority. You want to know about prayer? His voice wasn't loud, but it filled everything. You've been saying my words for years, speaking my teachings. But you don't understand the first thing about what I actually said. My hands started trembling. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Stand up, he said. I stood, legs shaking. I was still in the costume from filming, and the irony of that wasn't lost on me. I was dressed like Jesus while the real Jesus stood before me, and I felt like the most fraudulent person alive. He moved closer. I couldn't look at his face. The light was too intense, but I could feel his eyes on me. Every single day, he said, millions of prayers go up. Millions. And do you know how many of them I can answer? How many of them align with my Father's will? I shook my head. Almost none. The words hit me like a physical blow. But you said ask anything. Finish the verse, he interrupted. What does it say? My mind raced. Ask anything. In your name. And I will do it? And what does that mean? In my name? There was something in his voice, not anger exactly, but grief. Deep, profound grief. Do you think it's a magic formula? Do you think adding in Jesus' name, Amen, to the end of a selfish prayer transforms it into something I can honor? I felt sick, because, honestly, that's kind of what I thought, what I'd been taught. Just say the name, have faith, believe, and God has to answer, right? Show me your phone, he said. With shaking hands, I picked it up and held it out. He didn't take it, he just looked at it, and suddenly those prayer requests I'd been reading lit up, glowing on the screen. Read them to me, he said, out loud. So I did. Voice cracking, hands trembling, I read them. Lord, bless my business, help me get that promotion, heal my illness, fix my marriage, send a husband, provide money for. I trailed off. Keep going. I kept reading. Request after request. Need after need. Want after want. And with each one, I felt the weight in the room growing heavier. It wasn't that the needs weren't real, they were. People were hurting, desperate, broken. But something about reading them out loud in his presence made me see them differently. Do you notice anything? He asked quietly. I looked at the screen again, really looked, and then it hit me. They're all about us, about what we want, what we need. Yes, the single word carried such sadness. And what about what my Father wants? What about his will, his purposes, his kingdom? I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up. Jesus reached out. I felt rather than saw it, and suddenly I wasn't in my trailer anymore. I mean, I was, but I wasn't. It's hard to explain. Like I was standing in two places at once. I could still feel the floor under my feet, still see the walls of the trailer, but I was also somewhere else. I was in a church, a big one, beautiful. Sunday morning, the worship was loud, hands raised, people crying, and the pastor was leading prayer. God, we ask for financial breakthrough, he shouted. We ask for healing, we ask for blessing. The congregation echoed him, hundreds of voices, all asking, all requesting, all petitioning God for their needs. Watch, Jesus said beside me. I watched, and I saw something I can't fully describe. It was like, there were prayers rising up, visible somehow like smoke or light, thousands of them streaming up from that congregation. But as they rose, they hit a ceiling, not a physical ceiling, something else, and they just stopped, hovered there, going nowhere. Why? I whispered. Why aren't they? Because they're not prayers, Jesus said. His voice was gentle now, but firm. They're wish lists, they're demands, they're negotiations, but they're not prayers. He waved his hand and the scene changed. Another church, smaller in a different city, prayer meeting Wednesday night. Mostly older people, earnest, faithful. They were praying through a list, someone's aunt's surgery, someone's son's job search, someone's financial crisis. Again, the prayers rose. Again, they stopped, going nowhere. These people love you, I protested. They're sincere. I know they are, he interrupted, and the grief in his voice was unbearable. That's what breaks my heart. They're sincere, they're faithful, they show up, they pray, but no one has taught them how to actually pray. The scene shifted again, and again, and again. Church after church, prayer meeting after prayer meeting, individual believers on their knees in their homes, all praying, all sincere, all not being heard. Stop, I finally choked out. Please, I can't. We were back in the trailer. I was gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. The costume I was wearing, the robe, the sandals felt like a mockery now. Here I was, playing Jesus on TV, and I didn't even know how to pray. I don't understand, I said, voice breaking. You said ask and we'd receive. You promised. Were you lying? I never lie, he said firmly. But you've twisted my words to mean what you want them to mean. You've turned prayer into a divine vending machine. Insert faith. Insert the magic words. Get what you want. That's not prayer. That's not even close. He sat down, or seemed to, and I collapsed into my chair, unable to stand any longer. There is one prayer, he said slowly, deliberately, that heaven cannot ignore. One prayer that my Father will always answer. One prayer that aligns perfectly with his will and forces a response. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. What is it? I'm going to show you, he said. But first, you need to understand why your churches are full of disappointed believers, why prayer meetings are dying, why people are walking away, saying God doesn't answer. It's not because my Father doesn't hear. It's not because he doesn't care. He leaned forward, and even though I couldn't see his face clearly, I felt the intensity of his gaze. It's because you're praying the wrong prayers. The words hung in the air like an indictment. I thought about every prayer I'd ever prayed. Every casual, bless this food, and every desperate, please help me. Every be with so-and-so, and every provide for my needs. Were they all wrong? Had I been doing this wrong my entire life? Tomorrow night, Jesus said, standing, I'm going to show you what happened to those prayers you saw, where they went, why they were never answered. And then I'm going to teach you the one prayer that changes everything. Wait, I called out as he moved toward the door. Can't you just tell me now, please? I need to know. He turned back, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of his face. The love there was overwhelming, but so was the sorrow. You're not ready yet, he said gently. First, you need to see what you've been getting wrong. Really see it, because the prayer I'm going to teach you will cost you everything you think you want. And until you understand how worthless those things are, You won't be willing to pray it. Then he was gone. Just gone. The trailer warmed up immediately. I sat there shaking, still in costume, tears streaming down my face. My phone buzzed another prayer request notification. I looked at it differently now, and what I saw terrified me. Because if Jesus was right, and of course he was right, then everything I'd been taught about prayer, everything I'd believed, everything I'd practiced, it was wrong. All of it. And millions of Christians, just like me, were praying prayers that would never, ever be answered. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I just sat there, waiting for the next evening, knowing that what Jesus was about to show me would shatter everything I thought I understood about talking to God. The next night, I couldn't focus on anything. We were filming one of the prayer scenes, me as Jesus teaching the disciples, and I kept stumbling over the lines I'd said 100 times before. When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. But now those words felt different, heavy, loaded with meaning I'd completely missed. By the time we wrapped, it was past midnight again. I went straight to my trailer, didn't even stop to talk to anyone. I knew he was coming back. I could feel it. I sat down in the same chair, still in costume again, and I waited. My heart was racing. Part of me was terrified of what I was about to see. But another part of me, honestly, a bigger part, needed to know, needed to understand why my prayers, why everyone's prayers, weren't getting through. At 2:47 a.m. exactly, I remember looking at my phone. The temperature dropped again. You came back? I said quietly. I never left. His voice came from behind me. Are you ready to see where those prayers went? I nodded, not trusting my voice. What I'm about to show you will devastate you, he warned, but you need to see it. The whole church needs to see it, because you can't fix what you won't acknowledge. Before I could respond, the trailer disappeared. Not gradually, instantly. 1 second I was sitting in my chair, the next I was standing in. I don't even know how to describe it. It looked like a massive warehouse, but it stretched forever in every direction, and it was filled, absolutely filled with what looked like letters. Millions of them. Billions, maybe. Stacked everywhere, covering every surface. Piled so high I couldn't see the top. What is this? I whispered. These, Jesus said, his voice echoing in the vast space, are the prayers that never made it to my Father's throne. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All of these? This is just from the last month. Just from America. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was seeing. The sheer volume of it, the endless stacks of unanswered prayers from desperate, faithful believers who thought God was listening. Jesus walked forward and picked up one of the letters. It glowed slightly in his hands. Read it, he said, handing it to me. My hands shook as I took it. I don't know how, but I could see the prayer inside without opening it. Dear God, please let me get this promotion. I've worked so hard. I deserve this. I've been faithful. I've tithed. I've served in the church. Please give me this. In Jesus' name, amen. What's wrong with it? Jesus asked quietly. I looked at the prayer again, really looked. It's all about them. What they want. What they think they deserve. Keep going. They're trying to negotiate, like they're listing their good works as reasons God should answer. Yes. He took the letter back and it dissolved in his hands like mist. This person thinks prayer is a transaction. They do good things, so my Father owes them. They've completely missed what prayer actually is. He walked deeper into the warehouse and I followed, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of unanswered prayers surrounding us. He stopped at another pile and picked up several at once. Read these, he said. I did, one after another, and a pattern started emerging that made me sick. God, I know I haven't been to church in a while, but I really need this job, please. Lord, I'll start reading my Bible again if you just fix my marriage. Jesus, I promise I'll stop doing sin. Just please heal my mom. Bargaining, I said, my voice hollow. They're all bargaining with God. Yes, trying to make deals, offering to change in exchange for what they want. That's not repentance. That's not prayer. That's negotiation. He let the letters fall, and they vanished before hitting the ground. My Father is not a cosmic Santa Claus who rewards good behavior with presents. We kept walking. The warehouse seemed endless, and Jesus kept stopping, kept showing me prayers. So many prayers. A woman begging for a husband, but her real prayer, the one Jesus could hear beneath the words, was asking for someone to complete her, to fix her loneliness, to give her worth. She was asking for an idol, not a partner. A man praying for business success, but underneath it was pride, a desperate need to prove himself, to be seen as important. He didn't want blessing, he wanted glory. A mother praying for her child's healing, but the prayer was really about her fear, her need for control, her inability to trust God with the things she loved most. Wait, I interrupted, my voice cracking. That mother, she loves her child. She's desperate. How can that prayer be wrong? Jesus turned to me, and the compassion in his eyes was almost worse than anger would have been. Do you think I don't want to heal that child? Do you think my Father doesn't care about a mother's pain? Then why? Because she's not actually praying to my Father, she's praying to her fear. She's praying to her need for control. She's trying to manipulate God into doing what she wants, when she wants it, how she wants it. He paused. Real prayer would be, Father, your will be done. Give me the strength to trust you. Even if the answer is no, teach me to surrender this child into your hands. That prayer I could answer. That prayer aligns with my Father's will. I felt tears streaming down my face, because I'd prayed exactly like that mother. Hundreds of times. Thousands, probably. Jesus waved his hand and we were in a different section of the warehouse. These prayers looked different, somehow darker, heavier. What are these? I asked. These are the prayers from people who think they know better than my Father. He picked one up. This man is praying that his daughter wouldn't marry someone. He's certain this person is wrong for her. He's demanding God intervene. But what he doesn't know, what he can't see, is that this marriage is exactly what my Father is using to save both of them. His prayer is literally asking me to thwart my Father's plan. He grabbed another. This woman is praying for her church to grow, to become influential, to be known throughout the city. But that church is rotten at the core. The pastor is secretly living in sin. The leadership is corrupted by power. My Father is actually planning to tear it down and rebuild it from scratch. Her prayer is asking me to bless something I'm about to judge. But they don't know that, I protested. They can't see what you see. Exactly. His voice filled the space, not angry but passionate. That's the whole point. That's why the prayer I'm going to teach you is the only one that works. Because you can't pray effectively when you're blind. You can't ask for the right things when you don't know what the right things are. You can't pray in my name when you don't know my will. He started walking faster now, and I struggled to keep up. We passed section after section. Prayers for revenge disguised as prayers for justice. Prayers for comfort disguised as prayers for peace. Prayers for escape disguised as prayers for deliverance. Here, he stopped suddenly at a section that looked newer, the prayers still glowing fresh. These are from this morning, Sunday morning services, all across your country. I looked around, and the sheer volume made me dizzy. Thousands upon thousands of prayers, all from just one morning. Jesus picked up a handful and they projected into the air like holograms. I could see the people praying them in their churches, hands raised, tears streaming, completely sincere. I bind the enemy. I claim healing. I declare financial breakthrough. I speak success over my life. What's wrong with those? I asked, confused. They're using your authority, claiming your promises. Are they? He interrupted. Or are they trying to use my name like a magic spell? Like if they just say the right words in the right order with enough faith, they can force spiritual laws to work in their favor? He waved his hand and the projections changed. I saw a man in a prosperity gospel church shouting his declarations, claiming his breakthrough. But when Jesus showed me his heart, I don't know how, but I could see it. The man was secretly hiding debt, lying to his wife, cheating on his taxes. He wasn't seeking God's will. He was trying to use God's power to bail himself out of the consequences of his own choices. I saw a woman binding demons and spiritual forces, declaring victory. But her real issue wasn't demonic, it was her unwillingness to forgive someone who'd hurt her. She was trying to use spiritual warfare to avoid the hard work of obedience. I saw a young couple claiming God's promise for children. But they'd never actually asked God if he wanted them to have children right now. They just assumed, demanded, claimed. They were trying to force God's hand instead of surrendering to his timing. Stop, I begged. Please, I can't. But he didn't stop. He showed me more. Prayer after prayer after prayer. All sincere, all faith-filled, all completely, utterly wrong. He showed me celebrity pastors praying for their ministries to grow, but their hearts were full of ambition and pride. He showed me worship leaders praying for anointing, but they were secretly living in unrepentant sin. He showed me missionaries praying for breakthrough, but they were more concerned with their own legacy than with the people they claimed to serve. Even them? I whispered, horrified. Even the pastors, the leaders, especially them, Jesus said quietly. Because they should know better. They've been given much, and much is required. But they've turned prayer into a tool for building their own kingdoms instead of seeking my Father's. We stood there in silence for a long moment. The weight of all those unanswered prayers, all that sincere but misguided faith, pressed down on me until I thought I might collapse. Why? I finally asked. Why don't you just answer them anyway? You're God. You could. You could give them what they're asking for, even if they're asking wrong. Why don't you? Jesus turned to face me fully, and his expression was both fierce and tender. Because I love them too much. Because giving them what they're asking for would destroy them. Because what they think they need isn't what they actually need. Because I'm not interested in making them comfortable, I'm interested in making them holy. He gestured to the endless warehouse of prayers. Every single one of these requests, if I granted them, would pull these people further from my Father, would make them more self-centered, more entitled, more convinced that they can manipulate God into serving their agendas. How is that love? How is that help? I had no answer, because he was right. Of course he was right. The prayer I'm going to teach you, he continued, his voice softer now. It's not about getting what you want. It's not about convincing God to see things your way. It's not about having enough faith or using the right words or claiming the right promises. He started walking toward a door I hadn't noticed before. A massive door at the far end of the warehouse, made of something that looked like light itself. That prayer, he said, his hand on the door, is about one thing and one thing only, surrendering your will to my Father's. Completely. Totally. Without reservation. And when you pray that prayer, when you really mean it, when you fully surrender, heaven itself has to respond. Because that prayer is the only prayer my Father made promises about. The only prayer that's guaranteed an answer. He pushed the door open, and light flooded the warehouse. Brilliant, overwhelming light. Tomorrow night, he said, I'll teach you that prayer. I'll show you how it works. I'll reveal what happens when Christians finally learn to pray the way I actually taught them to pray. He paused. But I'm warning you now, this prayer will cost you everything you think you want. It will require total surrender. Most people aren't willing to pray it. That's why most prayers go unanswered. I want to know, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Whatever the cost. I need to know. He smiled then, and it was the saddest, most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. I know you do. That's why I came to you. Then I was back in my trailer, alone, shaking. The sun was starting to rise outside. I'd lost hours somehow. My phone was buzzing with notifications, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it, because I knew what I'd find: more prayer requests. More sincere, faithful believers asking God for things he couldn't give them in ways he couldn't honor. I thought about all the prayers I'd prayed over the years, all the asking, the pleading, the claiming, the declaring. How many of my prayers were sitting in that warehouse? How many times had I tried to bend God to my will instead of surrendering to his? And I thought about the door Jesus had opened, the light streaming through it, the promise of a prayer that actually worked, a prayer that heaven couldn't ignore. I had no idea what that prayer was, but I knew that by this time tomorrow, everything about my prayer life, everything about my relationship with God was going to change forever. I didn't go to set the next day. I called in sick, which I never do, but I just couldn't stand there in that costume speaking those lines about prayer, knowing what I now knew, knowing that I'd been getting it wrong my entire life. I spent the day in my apartment, barely eating, barely moving, just waiting, thinking about that warehouse, thinking about all those prayers floating up and hitting that ceiling, going nowhere, thinking about the door Jesus had shown me, the light streaming through it. What was behind that door? What was this prayer that could actually break through? By the time night fell, I was a wreck. I'd tried to pray a dozen times throughout the day and kept stopping, second-guessing every word. Was I doing it wrong again? Was this prayer just another addition to that warehouse? How do you pray when you don't know how to pray anymore? At 3:17 a.m., I'll never forget that time he was there. I didn't even see him arrive. I looked up from where I was sitting on my couch, and he was just there, standing in my living room like he'd always been there. I'm ready, I said before he could speak. Please, just tell me, what's the prayer? It's not about telling you, he said gently. It's about showing you. Because you've heard this prayer before, every Christian has, but you've never understood it. He sat down across from me, and I realized with a start that this was the first time he'd sat in my presence. Before, he'd always been standing, moving, leading me somewhere, but now he sat like we were about to have a conversation, like what he was about to share was too important to rush. When my disciples asked me to teach them to pray, he began, "Do you know what they were really asking?" I shook my head. They'd been praying their whole lives. They were Jews. They knew the Psalms, the formal prayers, the traditions, but they'd watched me pray and they saw something different. They saw prayers that got answered. They saw communion with my Father that they'd never experienced. So they asked me to teach them not because they didn't know how to pray, but because they realized they'd been praying wrong. He leaned forward. "And do you remember what I taught them?" "The Lord's Prayer," I whispered. "Our Father who art in heaven." "Stop." His voice was firm but not harsh. "That's exactly the problem. You've turned it into a ritual, a formula to recite. You say those words every Sunday, you teach them to your children, you pray them before meals, but you have no idea what you're actually saying." I felt like I'd been slapped. Because he was right. I'd said that prayer thousands of times, thousands, and I'd never really thought about what the words meant. "That prayer," Jesus continued, "is not a script to recite. It's a template, a pattern, and hidden in it right in the beginning, in the very first request, is the one prayer that forces God to answer, the prayer that heaven cannot ignore." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. "Which part?" He stood up and suddenly we weren't in my apartment anymore. We were back in that warehouse, but this time we walked straight to the glowing door. He pushed it open, and we stepped through into the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. It wasn't heaven, at least. I don't think it was. But it was close. The light was everywhere, warm and alive. And in the center of the space was a throne, massive, overwhelming, radiating power and glory. And around that throne were, I don't even know how to describe them, beings of light, angels maybe, constantly moving, constantly worshiping, constantly attending to something I couldn't quite see. "This," Jesus said, his voice full of reverence, "is my Father's throne room. This is where prayers come when they're prayed correctly." I looked around, and I realized something that made my knees weak. There were prayers here too, but not millions, not billions, just a few, scattered throughout the space, glowing with a different kind of light than the ones in the warehouse. Purer, brighter. "Why so few?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Because so few people pray prayers my Father can answer." He walked toward the throne and I followed, trembling. "But these prayers, every single one of them gets answered. Not might get answered, not if it's my Father's will. They do get answered. Always, without exception." He picked up one of the glowing prayers, and I could see it, really see it. It was from an elderly woman in a nursing home. No family, no visitors, forgotten by the world. And her prayer was simple. "Your kingdom come, your will be done, in my life, through my life, whatever it costs." "Watch," Jesus said. The prayer rose from his hands and went straight to the throne. And I actually saw the Father reach out and receive it. And instantly things started happening. Angels were dispatched. Circumstances were rearranged. People's hearts were touched. That elderly woman's very next visitor would be a young nurse who was on the verge of suicide, and somehow something that woman would say would save that nurse's life. And that nurse would go on to lead hundreds to Christ. All because of one prayer. One simple prayer of surrender. "Your kingdom come," Jesus said softly. "Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what you're actually asking for when you pray those words?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "You're asking my Father to do whatever he wants, however he wants to do it, through your life. You're not asking for your kingdom, your comfort, your success, your plans, your dreams. You're asking for his kingdom to advance, regardless of what it costs you personally." He showed me another prayer. A man who'd just lost his business, his house, everything. And his prayer was, "Your will be done. Use this. Use me. Whatever you're doing, I surrender to it." That prayer went straight to the throne. And I saw the Father's response, that man's testimony of faithfulness through loss would reach a successful businessman who'd been hardening his heart toward God. That businessman would be so moved by seeing someone worship God in loss that he'd finally surrender his life to Christ. And he'd go on to fund ministries that would reach thousands. All because one man prayed, "Your will be done," and actually meant it. "This is the prayer," Jesus said, his voice ringing with authority. "This is the only prayer that forces God to answer, not because it manipulates him, not because it uses the right formula, but because it's the only prayer that aligns perfectly with his will. When you pray, 'Your kingdom come, your will be done,' my Father can say yes. He wants to say yes. He's been waiting to say yes. But I struggled to find words. What about asking for things? What about our needs? You said to ask for our daily bread." "Yes," he interrupted. "Daily bread. Needs, not wants. Sustenance, not luxury. And even that request is wrapped in surrender. 'Give us this day our daily bread' means, Father, we trust you for today. We're not hoarding. We're not demanding abundance. We're asking you to provide what we need for right now." He turned to face me fully. Every line of that prayer is about surrender. "Hallowed be your name, not my reputation. Yours. Your kingdom come, not mine, yours. Your will be done, not mine, yours. Give us our daily bread, not our wants, our needs, and only for today. Forgive us as we forgive, surrender our right to hold grudges. Lead us not into temptation, surrender our own path. Deliver us from evil, acknowledge we can't save ourselves." He paused, letting it sink in. The entire prayer is surrender, from beginning to end. And that's why it works. That's why my Father answers it. Because it's the only prayer that doesn't try to bend God to human will, it bends human will to God. I was sobbing now, really sobbing, because I saw it. I saw how every prayer I'd ever prayed had been about making God serve my agenda. Even my good prayers, my faithful prayers, my desperate prayers, they were all about getting God to see things my way, to fix things according to my timeline, to answer according to my understanding. But what about? I struggled to speak through the tears. What about when we're desperate, when people are dying, when we're losing everything, when we need help now? Jesus' expression softened. "Do you think my Father doesn't care about desperation? Do you think he's indifferent to pain?" He shook his head. "No, he cares more than you can possibly imagine. But he also sees what you can't see. He knows what you need better than you do. And when you come to him in your desperation and say, 'Your will be done,' even if the answer is no, even if the answer is wait, even if the answer is something I don't understand, Father, I surrender, that's when miracles happen." He showed me more prayers. A mother praying over her rebellious son, "Your will be done in his life, whatever it takes, even if it breaks my heart." That son would end up in prison, and there he'd meet Christ and become one of the most powerful prison ministers in the country. A man diagnosed with terminal cancer. "Your kingdom come through this illness, through my life or through my death." He'd live another 20 years and his testimony would lead his entire extended family to Christ. But even if he died, the prayer would have been answered. God's kingdom would have come through his faithful death. A woman trapped in an abusive marriage. "Your will be done. Give me wisdom. Show me your path." She'd find the courage to leave, to protect her children, and she'd go on to run a shelter that would save dozens of other women. Every single prayer of surrender answered, not always the way they wanted, not always immediately, but always answered, always working for God's kingdom, always accomplishing his purposes. So when I pray, I said slowly, trying to understand, I should just surrender everything, never ask for specific things. "Ask all you want," Jesus said, "but wrap it in surrender. Father, I'm asking for healing, but your will be done. I'm asking for provision, but your kingdom come. I'm asking for this relationship, but if it's not your plan, then I surrender it." That's the difference. You can bring your requests, my Father wants you to, but you bring them with open hands, not clenched fists. You bring them wrapped in trust, not demand. He led me back toward the door, away from the throne room. "The tragedy," he said as we walked, "is that this is exactly what I taught. This is exactly what I modeled. Every prayer I prayed ended with, 'Not my will, but yours.' Even in Gethsemane, when I was facing the cross, when I was in agony, I still said, 'Father, if there's another way, I'd take it, but your will be done.'" We stepped back into the warehouse of unanswered prayers. The contrast was devastating, millions of prayers, all trying to tell God what to do. And in that throne room, just a handful of prayers, all surrendering to whatever he wanted to do. "So what do I do now?" I asked. "How do I pray this way? How do I teach others?" Jesus turned to me, his eyes blazing with intensity. "You start by praying it yourself, really praying it, not as a formula, not as a magic phrase to add to the end of your wish list. but actually surrendering. Take every prayer request you've been carrying, every desperate need, every urgent want, every cherished dream, and you lay it down and say, Father, your kingdom come, your will be done. In this situation, in my life, whatever you want, however you want it, I surrender. And what if? I hesitated. What if his will is something I don't want? What if he says no to things I'm praying for? Then you trust that he sees what you can't see, that he knows what you don't know, that his no is actually a mercy, protecting you from something that would harm you or steering you towards something better. Jesus' voice was gentle but firm. This is what faith actually is. Not believing God will give you what you want, but trusting him even when he doesn't. Trusting that his will is better than yours, even when you can't see how. He started to fade, the warehouse disappearing around us. Go back to your churches, he said, his voice echoing. Tell them, teach them. The prayer that moves heaven isn't the one with the most faith or the loudest voice or the most biblical phrases. It's the one with the most surrender. It's your kingdom come, your will be done. It always has been. It always will be. Wait, I called out. Will they listen? Will they believe me? He was almost gone now, just a shimmer in the air. Most won't, he said sadly. Because most people don't want surrender, they want control. They don't want God's will, they want him to bless their will. But some will hear, some will understand. Some will finally learn to pray the way I taught them to pray, and those prayers will change the world. Then I was back in my apartment, alone. The sun was rising again. I'd lost another whole night somehow. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, just processing. Then slowly, carefully, I got on my knees. Father, I whispered, my voice shaking, your kingdom come, your will be done. In my life, in my career, in my relationships, in everything, your will, not mine. Whatever you want through me, whatever you want to do in me, whatever you want to do despite me, I surrender to it. I don't understand it all. I don't know what you're doing. But I trust you. So, your kingdom come, your will be done. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't powerful. It was barely coherent. But the moment I said it really meant it, really surrendered, I felt something shift. Like a door opening. Like something that had been blocked suddenly flowing free. And I heard, so quietly I might have imagined it, finally, now we can really begin. Listen, I don't know what you're facing right now. I don't know what prayers you've been praying, what requests you've been making, what needs you're desperately bringing to God. But I need you to hear this. Most of those prayers, if they're like mine were, they're never going to be answered. Not because God doesn't love you, not because he doesn't care, but because they're the wrong prayers. The prayer that changes everything, the prayer that forces heaven to respond, the prayer that actually works. It's not about getting God to do what you want. It's about surrendering to what he wants. Your kingdom come, your will be done. That's it. That's the prayer. That's the one Jesus taught. That's the one that works. Every single time. But here's what I need you to understand. This prayer will cost you. It might cost you the relationship you're clinging to. It might cost you the comfort you're demanding. It might cost you the future you've planned. Because when you pray, your will be done, you're giving God permission to do whatever he needs to do in your life, through your life, to accomplish his purposes. And his purposes are always better than yours. Always. Even when they don't feel like it, even when they hurt, even when you don't understand. So I'm asking you, I'm challenging you, stop praying for God to bless your plans and start asking him to accomplish his. Stop asking him to fix your life the way you want it fixed, and start surrendering to whatever he's actually doing. Stop trying to get God to serve your kingdom and start asking for his kingdom to come, no matter what it costs you. Pray it right now. Don't wait. Don't overthink it. Just surrender. Father, your kingdom come. Your will be done. In my life, through my life, whatever it takes, I surrender. That's the prayer. That's the only prayer that heaven can't ignore. Because it's the only prayer that aligns with what God is already doing, already planning, already accomplishing. And when you pray it, really pray it, from a heart of genuine surrender, everything changes. Not always immediately. Not always, obviously. But it changes. Because you finally stopped fighting God and started partnering with him. You finally learned to pray. Now go. Pray that prayer. Teach that prayer. Live that prayer. And watch what God does when his people finally learn to surrender. Your kingdom come. your will be done. That's all we ever needed to pray. That's all we ever should have been praying. And it's all we need to pray from this moment forward. May God give you the courage to mean it.